So welcome everybody. This is our afternoon session on 2110 migration, and very distinguished speaker here, Renaud Lavoie, has run his own company for a number of years, but now he's heavily involved with Riedel and doing some wonderful things in 2110 implementation, and he's going to be talking about 3 tips that he believes are really crucial for making 2110 installations successful. So take it away, Renaud.
Thank you, West. Hello, everyone. It's good to be back face to face, right? So let's start right away. So basically, the goal of today, instead of going too technical to you guys, I decided to give you 3 tips that we learned when we did some install in IP. So let's tackle that. So this is the kind of the 3 tip I want to touch. So first one is define your network before you start, what you need and plan for it. And I will give you some example. The second one is in SDI timing was crucial, same as in IP. And I will give you some use cases, something that happened in the past. And last, a tip that we learned the hard way, it's for you to find the expert in the market, people that did it before, so then you don't start with them day one. So I look at Ed, and I'm pretty sure you know that. Okay, so the tip number 1, how to define your network. First, it's really depend the type of media you have. So if I look from top to bottom, if I look at UHD, it's so let's say it's 12 gig in SDI, so the number for 5994 will be 10.7 gig in 2110, just for the video, because we removed the blanking, right? So, and then you will probably want to pick 25 gig and 100 gig or 400 gig. But this is not always true. So if you said, let's start with HD first, so then you don't need this big pipe, that you will pay for it. So you will probably pick the 10 gig. Same for if you compress, JPEG XS, which is really popular. So if you start compressing with JPEG XS, your UHD, you can have a ratio of 10 to 1. So it will become, instead of 10.7 gig, it will become 1.07 gig. So again, you can pick a smaller pipe, and so on and so on. And same for audio. If you use audio, you will be at 1 gig. You don't need to spare 10 gig. So that's the beauty of 2110, but you have to really think about that. The other thing is, do you need one signal or you need many signals? And this is the product we created in embryonics, if you guys remember. If you pass by the Riedel booth, sorry, you will find we have a nice keychain giveaway, bottle opener, super cool. It's the only takeaway or goodies you can wear, like as a product. So I don't know any other. And then you also have the location. So the location, are you looking for an internet pipe, which if you look there, it's really interesting if you want to take a picture, but again, the presentation we'll share it, but you can see different, Wes said this to stay here, but I will move, I'm sorry. So you will see dark, fiber, and so on and so on. And I put here for you guys what you can expect or you can go with. Of course, you can say to me, yeah, internet, I can send an SD if you have, let's say, still, you need a big pipe to do that. But it's better for compressed, and also you have the automatic request transmission like RIST, SRT, and ZXC there. So really, that's the 3 main things to start. Then you look at which type of network. So, the funny part there is you will say, everyone will pick the spine leaf. The spine leaf you can scale. You can add some leaf switches connected to your spine. Funny enough, there's still the big monolithic core. And CBC in their installation in Montreal, they use both. In some places, they use the monolithic because they didn't want to bother with the bandwidth allocation in these pipes. In other cases, they say we want to scale, so they use the spine leaf. And if you're curious, probably you guys know that, but just a refreshing, this is what they do in cloud, in data center. They use really spine leaf. And if you're curious about that, you can look, all the paths are equal inside data center to make sure that if a packet goes from one direction, let's say to another one, because they have multiple layers like that, so they will make sure that your packet arrive always with the same delay. So the other question is redundant or non-redundant. That's another thing you have to plan before, you have to define. So if you have only monitoring, and in some cases, in fact, if you're curious, also we have an implementation in AWS, and for post-production, to minimize really the delay and to make it super quick, they use a non-redundant for their post-production. So they can like retry, okay, it's not live. If you do live, I strongly suggest you do a redundant one. This is also really critical if you're doing 24/7 and you need to do an upgrade. So let's say you have an upgrade on one of the switch. So then you can shut down the red. Usually it's blue, but Riedel likes the gray. So I'm sorry about that. So let's say red and blue. You continue to have your signal on the blue, and then you can do the maintenance on your red network. So do I have to go there? Is anyone wants me to go to the -7 redundancy, Pat? No? No, everyone knows. So I will skip that. So another important part, and this is something we also learned the hard way, it's to have VLAN in your network. So if you're more and more, you will see also in-band control, which is directly inside with mixed with video, audio. We tested that for a while. There's no big impact. But you want to have your PTP on the VLAN 10, and I just put some numbers, like VLAN 5 for the control, others for your other essences. It's for the switch and for when you will start like debugging that, because unfortunately you may have to, or you will have to. It will be really easy to see the flows and to see the VLAN, and you can filter. And it's protect also your PTP, because you can give him a better quality of service. You can say, this is a priority for me, and this is my tip number 2 that we'll talk about PTP, but you say, this is the priority for me. It has to be not impacted, so that's the best quality of service you will give. So I think I go really fast, guys. You should have tons of questions, because I will not take the entire 30 minutes. Okay, so out of band, in band. Cool thing on in-band is, like I said, it's not impacting your video, your flows. It has to be, again, well-defined. A big telecommunication guys in Canada, because Canada is pretty wide like in the US, said they use in-band all the way, because it's make no sense to add the switches in every city and have different control on other path, other fiber. So on the out of band, then you will have other switches, let's say a red and a blue for your control. And then you increase the cost of your system, because you will need those switch everywhere. So more and more people move to in-band, but there's also out of band that people still use today. The important thing to know also why some IT installation, they do that. It's because when the red and blue here for the payload is down, they call it the kind of light down management. But I just ask you a question. If we're losing the video audio stream, we have bigger trouble than having like to keep the control separated. We need to, basically, this is super crucial. So we see both in installation, but again, it's question of the setup you will do initially. Multicast, this is not like new for you, I'm sure. So you have unicast that basically you have a packet going to a switch to a destination. That's an easy one. By the way, they will, in data center, this is the way to go. They don't want to have multicast. Why? Because if it's not well configured, your multicast will become a broadcast. So all the packets will go to all the ports. And it's happened to us. You will kind of laugh. So We had our data, let's say our network for data in embryonics. So people working, right? Doing words, looking on finding like data sheet on the web. And someone, I will not call him genius, but let's call him genius. Someone said, I will connect my switch with video with 10 gig pipe. I will connect it to the network. I don't know, just for monitoring. And this guy kind of sent a packet inside the other switch, and the switch was not properly configured. So guess what? Everything was kind of down until we figured out where this was coming from. So the network, and this was 1 gig on my data network at Embryonics. I didn't need to have a 10 gig. So I had 10 gig packets flooding, basically flooding the entire switch. So it took us few minutes to figure that out. So just be aware of that as well. So tip number 2, let's go to tip number 2. So timing is critical. First is, this is an advice, if you start from scratch, from a green field, look for an SPG with Grandmaster. The S is a typo, sorry. But you will have, let's say, a GPS receiver that get the signal, and then you synchronize the PTP, which is crucial for your IP, and you will have also the SDI that will be synchronized with a black burst. So another example, we had a big customer that wanted to send signal to affiliates. And we didn't clearly, and them as well, we didn't clearly at the beginning said what we do with PTP. But the problem that we had was all the affiliates has their own clock. They have their own SPG. So we sent a 2110, which was not synchronized with SDI. So one solution would have been to put frame synchronizer, but everywhere, which is expensive, which take process time. So basically what we did, we created a small, like I told you, right, for the giveaway in Riedel. So basically we created a part that receive an SDI from the affiliates and recreate an entire PTP. So we created a Grandmaster. So, but if you want to avoid any problem like that, guys, so just check for an SPG that do both. And there's company at the show that do that. Now it's common now. So there's also what they call the best Grandmaster selection. So this gives you a little bit of advice. If you have in your organization some people like Geek said, oh, there's one PTP Grandmaster on Linux, just be aware that the Grandmaster in Linux has a high priority. It should not, but all your device can kind of like switch on that. It's also happened to us in the past. So you have to really be careful on that. And this is basically a selection tree to identify the best Grandmaster out there. Transparent versus boundary clock, that's also super interesting. If you start small, and let's say you have, I don't know, hundreds, 200 IOs, you can really go with transparent clock. So what happened is the parts or the slave or the device will want to talk with the Grandmaster, the one that is elected. So they talk with the Grandmaster and they get their clock and they have signaling with it. Think about this, but put 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 IOs or devices that say, hey, I want to have the clock. Hey, I want to have the clock. So you see that it's starting to be delays and it's not ideal. So it's better to use the boundary clock. So basically you have the master clock that talk to switches, and switches have one ports to do slave, so basically they connect on the Grandmaster, so it's kind of 1-to-1, and think that you have 20 switches, it will be 1-to-20. And then your switches will be the master for all the devices. So then you avoid this problem of going from a device back to masters when you have thousands and thousands of IOs. So that's an easy, all the, not all, but majority of vendors of switches today, the name you will find at the show, they support that. So you just configure the switch in boundary clock. So other thing you have to be aware of is type of PTP messages. When we started, this one was not implemented, so it was kind of a little bit strange. But unicast is, again, this is synchronization signal. So the protocol, if you want to read about it, it's really well defined. But the thing is, when we started that, we had unicast message from the grandmaster back to the slaves and back and forth. So you see, I have 1,000 devices, so I will have this 1,000 of time, which make no sense. So the best move to do is to use the hybrid. So my grandmaster will send a sync and follow up in a multicast. So all the device that want to get that will receive. So it's one, send it once, right? And then you have the answer. And sometimes you can also use multicast for the answer back. But then you minimize, again, the number of packet and the number of transfer on your network. This is also key. So tip number 3, and West, I will kind of save some time, I guess. But there will be tons of questions, I'm sure. So tip number 3, and we learned that the hard way. Manufacturers were really good in doing like products, but we are better now in supporting you guys. But we said, okay, let's do product, it's cool. But we're not usually the system integrator. So if we know our stuff, we know IP, we know 2110, and I'm really talking for all the other manufacturers. I'm sure they're happy about that. So you need good system integrators. You need people that know what they're doing. They have already did it, or they are trained. And then also, it's funny, but the switch vendor is the same. So if you pick switch vendors that have no clue about the broadcast, don't know our world and realities, they will like plug you as they plug it before in IT. And really important on that, that's my final slide. It's really, so for an IT person, the bandwidth is a concern. So if they have let's say a data center, they're concerned by the bandwidth. They don't want to, let's say, oversubscribe, in fact, use the bandwidth. This is really important for them. So for us, bandwidth is important, but we add 2 other things. So first, packet drop, because we're doing UDP in 2110. There's no retransmission like HTTP. And the other one is the latency, because the latency is crucial, right? You don't want to have a camera, a huge latency that like milliseconds. You want something super, super quick. And the last is this, cross-training is needed. So if you have your people from broadcast, they need to have training in IT. And IT needs to understand first these 2 other ones, the packet drop and the latency. And then they need to understand video and audio as part of their new job working in 2110 or working in IP. So just to summarize, and I'm sorry, I don't have the QR code, so you will have to email me. I'm easy to find, Renaud Lavoie on LinkedIn, so you can connect if you like. But I will share also the presentation for sure. So to summarize the 3 tips, first, architect your network well. So second is timing is as crucial as SDI. And the third one is find the expert, because this will really ease your life, guys. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Renaud. Appreciate that.